Gilligan's theory of moral development. When we talk about morality, we often think of questions like what is right or wrong, fair or unfair, just or unjust. Many psychologists and philosophers have tried to explain how people develop their sense of morality, and one of the most influential theories comes from Carol Gilligan. Gilligan offered an alternative perspective to Lawrence Kohlberg, whose stages of moral development focused mainly on justice, rules, and principles. Gilligan argued that morality is not just about applying universal rules but also about relationships, care, empathy, and responsibility toward others. She believed that earlier models of moral development were too centered on male experiences and ignored the voices of women and their way of thinking about morality. Gilligan's theory of moral development is sometimes called the ethic of care, and it shifts the focus from rigid rules to human connection. Instead of thinking only about abstract justice or what rules should be followed, Gilligan's theory emphasizes understanding the needs of others, responding with compassion, and valuing relationships. This does not mean her theory is only about women or that men cannot think in this way. Rather, Gilligan highlighted that different voices exist in moral reasoning and that one important voice had been neglected for too long. Gilligan described 3 levels of moral development in her theory. At the first level, which she called orientation to individual survival, people think mostly about themselves and their own needs. This is not surprising because as children or even young adults, survival and self-protection often come first. At this stage, morality means what is good for me. For example, a child might say it is wrong to share their toys because then they will not have them anymore. Or a teenager might argue that cheating is fine as long as they do not get caught because it benefits them directly. The second level is called goodness as self-sacrifice. At this stage, people start to realize that relationships matter and that others also have needs. Here, morality is understood as being good to others, even if it means putting one's own needs aside. Many women in traditional roles, like mothers or caregivers, often find themselves in this stage because they feel the moral obligation to sacrifice their own desires to care for others. For example, someone might think it is wrong to take time off for themselves if their family needs them, even if they are exhausted. The focus here is on not being selfish, but sometimes it can go too far and make people ignore their own well-being. The third level is called the morality of nonviolence or the ethic of care. At this point, people learn to balance care for themselves with care for others. They realize that their own needs are just as important as the needs of others, and true morality lies in creating harmony and avoiding harm to both self and others. In this stage, morality is not about blind self-sacrifice or rigid justice rules but about empathy, responsibility, and thoughtful decision-making. For example, a person in this stage might recognize that saying no to someone's request is not selfish but necessary if it protects their own health, and at the same time they would still look for ways to be supportive. What makes Gilligan's theory so powerful is that it challenges the idea that morality is a one-size-fits-all journey. She argued that earlier models, like Kohlberg's, judged women unfairly by ranking their reasoning as less developed because they did not focus as much on abstract justice. Instead, Gilligan showed that moral reasoning can take different forms, and caring for others is just as important as following principles of justice. She gave voice to a way of moral thinking that values compassion, listening, understanding, and relationships. In everyday life, Gilligan's theory can be seen everywhere. Think about a nurse caring for a patient, a parent making decisions about their child's well-being, a teacher trying to balance fairness with kindness, or a friend supporting another in a difficult time. These are moral actions based on empathy and care, not just on rules and punishments. Even in professional settings, leaders who adopt an ethic of care often create more supportive and healthy environments compared to those who focus only on strict rules and discipline. Her theory also highlights an important lesson for modern society: morality should not ignore emotions. Too often, morality has been discussed in cold, logical terms, as if feelings are a weakness. Gilligan argued that emotions like empathy and compassion are strengths that guide us toward a deeper sense of responsibility and justice. For example, when addressing issues like poverty, climate change, or gender equality, it is not enough to make fair rules and policies. We must also care about how those issues affect people's lives on an emotional and relational level. Gilligan's work has influenced not only psychology but also education, healthcare, ethics, and even politics. Teachers use her theory to understand how students make moral decisions. Healthcare workers use it to strengthen their caregiving approaches, and social activists use it to argue that caring about others is as important as making fair laws. In relationships, it helps us recognize that morality is not just about fairness but also about compassion and the effort to avoid hurting others unnecessarily. In short, Carol Gilligan's theory of moral development reminds us that morality is not only about abstract principles but also about the real human experiences of care, empathy, and relationships. She showed that listening to different moral voices makes our understanding of right and wrong richer and more inclusive. Her ethic of care is not limited to women, nor is it opposed to justice. Rather, it complements justice by reminding us that rules without compassion can become empty, and care without balance can become self-destructive. True morality comes when we balance both. If you found this explanation helpful and clear, please do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support will encourage us to keep creating more content like this, making complex ideas easy to understand for everyone.